everyone, welcome to the Weekly Word. My name's Jonathan Hatt, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about Daniel. I was in the Word a little while ago and stumbled across the book of Daniel again, and the Sunday school story about Daniel in the lion's den, and it's always been something that fascinated me. But there's an aspect of his life that really resonates with us today and with what we're doing in society and everything going on in the world today. And it's the fact that Daniel chose his character over his comfort, the fact that he chose who he was more important than anything else. And we know the story that Daniel was a godly man and that the other higher-ups in the government didn't like him, and so the king kind of loved Daniel and he was a favorite of his, and the other guys kind of came up with this way to trap him. And they said to the king, listen, let's come up with this law that nobody serves anybody other than you, nobody worships anybody other than you for this upcoming week, that it's illegal to pray to anybody else other than you. And the king thought it was great, but they knew that it was going to trap Daniel, that he would be consistent like he always was, and that he would pray and that he would show his godly character regardless. And when Daniel heard about this law, he had a choice to make. He could choose comfort, which would be just to pray in his house with his windows shut for the first time and just kind of not let anybody see him pray, or he could just show his godly character regardless and do the same thing and show the world that he served God and that God was mighty. And that's exactly what he did. So let's look at Daniel 6, chapter 6, verse 4, and it says, "At this, the administrators and satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel and his conduct over government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent." So he was a trustworthy guy, and he followed the Lord. But then he went home and he opened his windows and he prayed anyway, and people could see him. They tried everything they could to find some sort of fault or failure in him. They couldn't find it, so they just came up with this law to trap him. And he prayed in the open so people could see him. Regardless, he could have just, prayed inside, like I said. God would have heard his prayer regardless. God can hear you no matter where you're praying. It wouldn't matter. But it mattered to him because he chose his godly character over the comfort of his life. And it did put his life at risk. They threw him in the lion's den, and he knew that was an option, but he didn't care. He said, I would rather die serving the Lord than live walking away from him. And I remember many years ago, I was at my friend's house as a teenager, and his uncle was there. There was a barbecue or something, and we were there hanging out. And his uncle was talking to me, and he said, "Yeah, I just love your dad." And he was a carpenter, and he got telling me the story about a job site. And they were all there working, and my dad was a lineman for MB Power, and they were at the same job site working on a house. So they must have been hooking power up. And my friend's uncle, the carpenter, was there, and he said there was a whole crew of construction workers there sitting around for lunch. And the conversation kind of took a turn, and there was some, inappropriate subject matter and some jokes that were really crude and just not good. And my friend's uncle wasn't a Christian at the time. And he said he noticed my dad kind of just get up and walk over to the truck and start tidying things up and getting ready for the job that they had to do after lunch. But he said, I knew why he got up. He said, I knew he just didn't want to be around that kind of talk and didn't want to be involved in that kind of discussion. And he removed himself. And he said, that really spoke to me that he would do that and that he would show his character that way. And it wasn't even something that a lot of people could see. It wasn't something that a lot of people would notice. But he said, I noticed. And it meant a lot to him. And years later, he came to know the Lord. And that was part of it. He said, your dad was always the same. Now, in our lives, in this world, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. There's a lot of messed up stuff. We need to choose our character, our godly character, over the comforts of this world. Where we're consistent, we serve God, we follow Him, we walk with Him, regardless of what's going on around us. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's easy to follow Him and to show godly character. And other times, it's really hard to be upright and to be righteous in this dark world. But that's what we're called to do, to shine His light in this dark world. So this week I want to challenge you to see if there's any area of your life that you've been making compromises for the sake of your comfort rather than sticking to your godly character. And if so, I challenge you to make the decision to make those tweaks, those changes in your life, to follow Him whether it's easy or not, to follow Him regardless of the situation. and make those choices today, and step towards Him in your faith, and grow stronger every day. And just remember that He's with you, that God loves you, and that He will help you and give you the strength to do it. Have a great week, everyone.